Hey guys, it is about that time. Not even, it is that time. And I'm super excited to say hi to you all this evening for multiple reasons. I have been waiting for this Insta Live for weeks. For weeks, ever since I saw Sunil on my birthday, or a little bit before my birthday, and celebrated with him. And we talked long and hard about how we needed to both get on Insta Live and talk about a subject that we're both really, really passionate about, which is creating impact, creating change, and actually doing it and not just talking about it. So nowadays, as we all know, that the whole concept of diversity, equity, inclusion has become so huge, especially in a 2020-21 kind of space, especially with the kind of inequity that's been happening all over the world, and people are starting to wake up and hashtag, and you have companies having chief diversity officers, and then you have educational institutions talking about diversity and impact. It's never been more relevant than it is today. So while I probably don't have to introduce Sunil to all of you, and he will, of course, introduce himself when he jumps online, he is someone who has supported everything that I have ever tried to do ever since we've known each other, and that is now going on 2 decades. So whether it's been education, whether it's been fashion, whether it's been impact, whether it's been entrepreneurship, leadership, all of it. So he is, besides being a very close friend, somewhat of a human evangelist, and someone who wants what's best for people, not just for the community that he represents. And he has multiple identities, which I'm sure all of you have seen on the posters that we've been putting up. So we're going to be talking about having 2 identities, one as a fashion choreographer and the other as someone who has advocated for the LGBTQIA community since forever, and longer than it's even been a word or a hashtag. So hey Ritika, hey Arjun, Ashini, great to see you. I'm so glad you're joining us. Zishan, complete pleasure to have you. I hope things are going well on your side of the border. We have a lot of exciting cricket going on, but we are not going to be talking about cricket today. So I will now go ahead and request Sunil and let him join, and we can get this show on the road. To accept request, Sunil, let me tell you, is right now in Kerala, which lovely place. I haven't been there in a very long time. Hey!
Hi.
So excited to see you.
Yes.
It just feels like it was a minute ago when we caught up for birthday celebrations, and I have been missing you far too much. And you cannot spend this much time away from me. But I was hoping you caught my little bit of an intro, but I was hoping you'd do the honors and let everyone who's on the call, our numbers are shooting up. I love it when we've got more than 10 people. It's always a good day. So, so if you can go ahead and tell everyone what we're going to be talking about, and we'll jump right into it.
Well, Anjali and I have been going on and about this, and as an identity activist, that I would give her that, title. She has been pushing for, tabling this as a conversation, bringing it more mainstream, and especially using social media effectively to reach out to a lot of people who still are, I wouldn't say clueless, but there are a lot of gray areas and a lot of questions that they have. They don't know who to ask. They are easily swayed by what they see on, online, and, get impressed by it. How much of it is really the truth, or, what you see is not what you really get. So you have to understand that. And so I very later on have realized that the impact and the, of social media and how it can be used effectively, because I come from an old school where I feel my work should speak for itself, and I'm not going to tom about what I did, what I achieved, or what we got together and done. So thanks to Anjali, you dragged me out to make this conversation. It's a little embarrassing for me to talk about what I've done, so it's easier if you ask the question or somebody asks questions, and then we just go from there.
Absolutely. No, no. I mean, this was what I planned to do, you and your reticent self. In fact, let me tell you, let you all in on a secret. When Sunil gets too much attention, he runs away to Kerala, okay? And he wants it.
I am in Kerala right now.
No, I told him that. I told him that. So we have somebody called Dusky who's saying hello to you. But guys, we will keep our questions for later on in the discussion because Sunil and I have a ton to get through. But yeah, Sunil, and and the recent conversation you and I had, the thing is, you've done so much work, much before the talking about the work even became a thing. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what I wanted to get to the meat of, because you've actually been an advocate for change for a very long time, much before Facebook even became a thing. So, you know, so forget about Instagram. You know what I'm saying? This is before Facebook. This is could even go back as much as far as smartphones. So if you could just take us through a quick...
This is pre-smartphone era. This is 1992. I know how many of you were born then.
Either. So we're going to have to look for print photographs if we need to get proof of what you've done.
So, yeah, so just quickly to recap from where I started, how I got involved. 1992, while I was doing my PhD at the Madras University in anthropology, I bumped into an anthropologist for WHO, who was the consultant for WHO, and he was in Chennai doing work around HIV prevention, looking at it from an ethnographic standpoint, seeing which are the communities at high risk. And, you know, earlier on in the pandemic, when you look at HIV in the early 90s in India, it was seen as primarily focusing only on female sex workers and allied populations like truckers and brothel owners and, you know, pimps and all that, the sex trade, not looking at the larger population and seeing how it has infiltrated and spread across all boundaries and identities. So when Dr. Robert Uspogus met me at a very casual chat, and this was at one of the first HIV/AIDS research centers run by Dr. Sundaraman. The moment he heard that I was an anthropology student, he said, "You have to come and join me and you have to work with me." I had no intention. I'm an accidental activist. I was accidental everything. I had no intentions of being an activist because I remember earlier on, you know, the first and person who ever came out in India publicly, Ashok Rao Kavi, the godmother of the whole movement of LGBT from Bombay. I remember I knew him from the beginning, and then he said, "We need somebody like you in the South." And I said, I panicked. I said, "No way. I don't think I have the guts to do something like that." But when Dr. Robert came in 92 and said that, you know, this is something we need to do from an ethnographic standpoint. Let's just study. Let's see what's happening. What are the risk factors? Let's see how vulnerable this population is and who is coming and what is happening. So that piqued my interest as an anthropologist. I jumped in headlong. I got completely taken in by what I was doing. The research was such an eye-opener, and it was a journey for me. Because it was then that I came to terms with who I was. I became extremely comfortable with who I was, and I said, this no longer, I didn't want to pretend, I didn't want to hide, and I felt, you know, suddenly there's a sense of belonging. In the 90s, most of us grew up in fear because there was no social media, there was no internet, there was no support groups, there were no gay groups, nothing. And, you know, growing up, I remember being as a postgraduate student, my first aim was crack TOEFL, crack GRE, let's go abroad, let's study in the US. My sister was already there. I said, I'm going to head and do my PhD there. I got into NYU for my PhD program in anthropology.
Wow.
And all this was happening, and all because I just wanted to run away. At that point, I just didn't have the guts to stay back and fight my own battles and work it out. And I just thought going abroad and just living my life freely the way I wanted to was what I had in mind. Everything changed, you know. I always say there's a higher power, there's somebody else who decides, and, you know, it just panned out differently completely. From a primate, I wanted to be a Diane Fossey primatologist kind of person, you know, studying primates and monkeys. And then suddenly I'm this HIV/AIDS activist and one of the earliest, in the early 90s. So there was two things to it. There were two identities here. One, I was doing HIV/AIDS work. So
Right.
under the garb of doing HIV/AIDS work and working with vulnerable populations, I was also dealing with the fact that I was working with a completely underground, invisible community that was at risk. And then we're looking at the LGBT community, right? And
Right.
in those days, the acronym we used was MSM and TG. So MSM was males who have sex with males. We never used the word gay, bisexual, in the or whatever those days because it was
Really?
sexual. It was sexual behavior, not identity. None of these men knew what it was to be gay or bisexual. There was no such term in your head. If you look at any Indian language, there is no
Right.
word for. There was no word for heterosexual. If you look at any Indian language, there is no need to talk about it because that was how fluid sexuality was pre-Victorian era. All our languages. In fact, I think Indian mythology recognizes 4 to 5 genders. If you're in the U.S., American tribes, Native American tribes recognize 5 genders. So it was there before. So it's the sense of 200, 300 years of British rule and the Victorian sense of morality, what's right, what's wrong, guilty, sin, all that came in. And then suddenly we all felt very moral, and felt that we were seen as heaven and, not like pagan kind of religion, pagan kind of lifestyle. What are you doing? So when all that changed with the Anglicization and of the whole country and, we became more modern and developed so that we
Right.
keep up with the West, that is where everything changed. And then it really became difficult for a lot of us to express ourselves. So HIV was spreading really fast. It was alarming at that point. I mean, I know a lot of people that I've lost, we've lost in the fight against the virus very early on. Amazing human beings. It's an emotional journey for me to have come all these years. It's nearly 30 years. Imagine 92 and now we're 2021. It's
Yeah.
nearly 30 years. It's an exhausting emotional roller coaster that has been, from where I started innocently, completely naive. I was completely naive with coming on board as an anthropology research scholar. This is what was in my head. Okay, I'm just doing something. I was excited. It was WHO. It was an international, UN organization. They are hiring me to do this research for them. It was a contract. I was not hired by them technically,
Right.
So all that, it was exciting. At that time I'm fresh out of college, I'm doing my PhD, and then suddenly this happens. It falls into my lap. It was like providence. And then I saw what motivated me and what inspired me was the fact that I realized I came from such a position of privilege, and I had so much in my life that I was thrown into midst of people who had nothing, zero.
Yeah.
And they would walk into our center, they would be smiling, they would be happy, they'd have a cup of tea and we'll gossip, we'll chat. And I would look at these women and say, wow, you have all the stacks up against you, all the odds against you. You walk into this center, you're, treating me like anybody else and we're just having a good chat. And
Yeah.
that was what inspired me. I said, these are amazing human beings. These are true warriors. These are the women I would felicitate with awards. These unknown women, because they fought every day in an extremely toxic patriarchal environment where, if you're a sex worker, there's no way you can escape that environment. Once you're in, there's no out. It was
Right.
scary. And at such an early age to get exposed to that, then start working with the trans and MSM LGBT community, and then seeing how even more vulnerable and more underground we were to reach out to that community and work with them. So that was my inspiration. So then I said, okay, if I can do so much, maybe start a small center, like a helpline, a small space where we can all gather, and give them the kind of support, mental and emotional support that they needed more than
Right.
anything else. And that's how, fast forward to 1998, 6 years later, I started my NGO called Sahodaran.
So, I mean, before we get into Southern, I actually am curious about one thing. So, you had mentioned something earlier, which really struck me. So it seems like you were doing your PhD, you had this opportunity to be an anthropologist, wanted to, run away, which I do not blame you at all for. I think there are many of us who want to do it even today. But I have a question. So you kind of, your own coming out journey, did that coincide with this process of learning and understanding and throwing yourself into it? I think that's so phenomenal. Can you tell me a little bit more
Because
about
that's how I came to terms with myself. If not, I would have just escaped to the US, lived like a gay guy, expat Indian in the US, lead a double life, be gay there, come back here, pretend to be not gay, be family, whatever. I see that happening. A lot of people do that. You'd have dual identities like that, because then America, you are who you are, or Europe, wherever you live, and then you come back home, you try to fit into what is expected of you as a son, in a family, or a brother, or whatever, So that I escaped that, that's where this research opened it up for me. And I met such amazing, inspiring human beings. Another person I have to mention is Shivananda Khan. He's no more. He was the Knighted Order of the British Empire. He was the one who was relentlessly after me. And he said, I was presenting at the International AIDS Conference in Berlin in 1993.
Really?
And he said, you are... Yeah, so he said,
Tell us.
That was scary. Okay, so 1992, I'm sitting down with Dr. Robert, and he said, Sunil, you're going to present at the International AIDS Conference in Berlin. And I freaked out. I have never done anything like this in my life. I said, you're insane. He said, no, you're doing it. So I basically researched for him, and I'm thinking, he'll present the paper, and I'll just go along. If I'm lucky, I'll just go along. He said, no, I'm not coming. I went alone. I flew. I was like, it was just so scary. And I went there and I had amazing support. And then it was just, from then on, it was like, it was really, I owe it to these people. I owe so much to them, because if he didn't push me to do that presentation, and he made me practice, he would sit there and say, okay, I'll sit, I'm the audience now you present your paper. And I would talk, and he said, and he'll correct me, and then he'll say, no, you're talking too much, curtail your conversations. And you have
a huge audience. I mean, this is a global stage, right?
300 people. I freaked out. I stood there. There was like a sea of humanity. And I'm like, shucks, how am I going to do this? And you know what? I was so nervous. I had slides. I had pictures to show. I forgot completely. I completely forgot that. I said, oops, I forgot to show you the slides. I said, I was so caught up in presenting. They said, yes, you must. And then my time was up. He said, no, we have to see your slides. So I showed them all the pictures. And in one picture, this is basically a cruising site. A cruising site is where men gather to meet each other furtively, darkness.
So this is by the way, sorry. So this is like an old age grinder? Is it kind of like a hidden grinder?
What?
Is it like how, okay. So, like now you have like apps called like Grindr.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
Is it like an old thing where people used to hide and kind of do a Grindr situation?
This is a space where you used to hang out, like, and have a coffee and chat. It's like a bus stop. Okay.
Virtual. This is like an actual physical space.
There was no phone. We had to meet physically. There was no online meeting at all. So that was the scary part, because we had to be careful of police. We had to be careful of local thugs, because they knew we were hanging out on this. They'd come blackmail. There was extortion. They'll take money off you. They'll take your phone off you, the money wallet, whatever. They take whatever they can off you.
This is actually in Chennai or in other cities?
Yes. Everywhere it happened. So this happened in Chennai. So I remember that one slide that I showed, there were cows sitting in the bus stop, and the whole room burst out laughing into a giggle. And they said that was the best presentation ever. It was very, I just realized that, I can't remember what I spoke, to be honest. I just went with the flow. I just spoke what I had to do. And then at the end, I just showed these pictures and all that. So that's when Shivananda Khan walks up to me. He's from UK. He walks up to me and he says, I need to talk to you. You're working for me. I was like, ooh, so much was happening suddenly. And so he's the one who got me funding.
What a start.
Absolutely. It was like, that's why I said, it's destiny. None of this was planned. I never thought I would be doing all this work. Never. When I grew up, what's funny, when I was growing up, I was in Sisha, right? So we all Sishites, and, we had a very comfortable life, and, you won't think of the future and all that. So I was a wildlife, by complete enthusiast. I used to read voraciously on animals and wildlife and this and that. So if anyone asked me what you want to be, wildlife warden in Africa. This is what I would say. Okay. And I said, so that was how I was at that time. Because all I could think was I wanted to be with animals, because then I could be just away from society and, all that negativity and all. In a way, it was running away from facing your story and your truth, So then that's what I'm saying. I was thrown into this, literally. If it hadn't been for these two individuals, I won't be here talking to you. These two men.
Like most amazing about you, and the thing is, the reason, and I can say this with the veracity of somebody who knows, because it's been 20 years since I've known you, and you are as comfortable with this, with your truth and with the authenticity of your story today as you were when I met you. It's not even like, suddenly social media happened and hashtag LGBTQIA happened and then Sunil jumped onto the scene. Because I know that there are a lot of people who have done that. You know what I'm saying? As society has shifted and borders have been this thing, people have been braver. I mean, everybody has their own journey. This is not, meant to be a judgmental conversation, but I'm definitely going to acknowledge that you were somebody that sort of was so ahead of your time, so ahead of the time even now. Now it's become a little bit, it's convenient in some ways to now say I'm this and I'm that.
Absolutely. I want to be very honest and blunt about it. So, my journey was, like I would say, child of providence or very accidental activist, whatever I want to call myself, It happened. I just went with it. Heart and soul got so involved with it that it became my life, my calling, And at the same time, I was extremely fortunate because I had a passion for fashion. My fashion career, I made an inroad into the fashion career in the early 90s itself, around same time, So that way, as I say, for me, everything has happened for a reason, And there was a break in my work from 94 to 98 in the HIV/AIDS work that I did. In that 4 years is when I consolidate myself in the fashion industry, because I had something to fall back on.
Right.
So then I could, both went parallelly after that. It was just two arms of my life, going on, and I made them overlap.
Yeah, so that's kind of the really interesting Venn diagram, which I think most people don't know, understand, or see. But this is what I wanted to kind of get into, is how do you blend these two identities? Because we know the fashion world and we know what drives it. And we know that is, unless, except when, fashion meets philanthropy, which is every once in a while when someone wants to do a show that matters. The two callings
it's for a cause, and the cause is in inverts. You don't know who it's benefiting, because in the end of the day, all of us are still looking around for funds. I don't know who's benefiting from all these so-called fundraisers.
Right. And how hard is that? I mean, how has it been? Because, it's such a story of evolution, such a breakthrough. And then you're joined by this cacophony of Me Too's. I mean, not using that term loosely, but people who have jumped onto the bandwagon, who are talking about doing things, about being advocates, which is why the word advocate, influencer, I use very carefully, only when a person is actually an advocate or an influencer. And you are
exactly. So nowadays, these names don't have any meaning. There's no weightage, because you see all these people online using these words. And I said, do they even understand what the meaning of that word is? Where is the credibility? Where is the matter, the substance to who you are and what you're doing, for you to self-proclaim, I am this person, And that's really sad, because this is where media plays, makes it easy for them, Social media has opened it up, and then everybody's on the, like you said, jumped onto the bandwagon. Until 2018, the LGBT community lived in fear of constantly being penalized legally for being LGBT, because the legal aspect only opened up since 2018. Right. And now suddenly there are so many people who are saying that I'm this, I'm that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You weren't around 5 years. Let me not even look 20. You weren't around 5 years ago.
Yeah,
So
well,
now it's convenient for
yeah.
people to say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm thinking, just because I'm not on social media and saying and doing the things that I've done, So even I've seen interviews. So I've seen people talk, and then sometimes, the media also needs to take responsibility for promoting people who, without fact checking,
Right.
are these people, are their credentials up to the mark to what they're saying? Does it match? What have they contributed? And this is where, that's the reason why I just took a back seat and I said, I'm done. I've done my bit. It's for me. I did it for me, not for the media, not for publicity, not for anything else. I reached out to a community that was extremely vulnerable and disenfranchised. And the love and support I get from them is undeniable, even
No,
till day.
in fact, let me jump in here. I mean, and I want to tell everyone who's on the call and going to be watching this after the fact, it has been a huge effort for me to drag Sunil to this Insta Live today.
Yeah,
I'm
this is.
I'm hoping it is the start of many more, because these are very, very important conversations. And for me, especially given my own life story in terms of embracing identity, even though not necessarily, because identity differs, right? Sexual is one. I mean, there are so many different kinds, but embracing identity has been so difficult. It's been a 12, 15-year journey for me. And you have stood rock solid as someone who went before. And I can only look up to and emulate and know that somebody has done it, and therefore there's someone to reach out to who's actually walked the talk. So this walking the talk, coming back to what you were saying, is so important. And I was hoping we could just loop back quickly to Sahodran and talk about your experience, because you've actually created something, right, of value. So so you can take us to the start of that.
So yeah, so 94 to 98, there was a lull because the project didn't come through. There was no funding. So I took a backseat and I said, okay, now I don't know how this is going to work, but then I got fully involved with my fashion work. And, in the 90s, the fashion industry was a fledgling industry. We were all kind of finding our roots, so to speak, and finding ourselves, our identities, so to speak, as to what was our role each one of us had in the industry, in creating that industry, so to speak. So there was just non-existent. So we had to create all that, And then in 98, Shivananda Khan, Dr. Shivananda Khan came back with the promised funding, sat on me and said, now this is your baby. You take this and run. So that's how I started Sahodran. And the main essence of why I started it was, my premise was that if you are looking at a very disenfranchised community and you want to work with them, if you don't involve the community in the whole process of not only setting up the organization or the work, involving them and picking their brains and say, what is that you need? What is necessary for this program to succeed? This is where the involvement of the community is needed full on. And we train people from the community, they run the program themselves. Me being the initial, Kickstarter of the whole NGO was me, because I was from the community. I gathered strength from people who allied and said, yes, we will be with you and you go ahead and do this. And then from the community, we handpicked young boys who were willing to work, stick their neck out, work for us, and make a difference. And we're looking at sexual health at that time. We're looking at specifically at HIV, because it was spreading so fast. It was scary the way.
These are boys, when you say stick their necks out, boys who are willing to identify.
Yes. So in the sense, it was, we offered them a safe space. Like, you would work within an office where everybody was from the community. So I didn't have to be scared that, oh, my colleague might pass a comment about me and say, oh, he is so and so, he's like that or this, because all of us were from the same community. There was no non-community person in my NGO. So what happened was, there was complete freedom. Nobody had to be scared at all. There was no prejudice. There was no fear of being called names or whatever. And then the energy was so much better, because then I could literally tap into the potential that they had. Yes, they came from educationally incomplete backgrounds, where because of social stigma, sexual harassment, whatever, the various issues that happened when they were young in school and colleges, most of them were dropouts. So they couldn't fulfill a requirement when I was filling in applications. And I said, this is something that we have to look into, is that we cannot look at education qualification alone. We have to look at whether that person has it in him to work for the community, that he is himself accepting who he is and he's willing. And
Right.
he has that in him. So you just train them and fill up the capacity, bring them up to where you want them to be. And that's the success of Sahodran. So we started in 1998. It's been an amazing journey looking at how, over the years, we have trained so many of them. So many of us from the community have been trained. And, we all have this issue that if you don't speak English, you're not educated enough or you're not articulate enough. And so what happens, a lot of these kids lose out on opportunities, whether it's work or, whatever they want to do in talent-wise. So this was a space where everyone spoke in the vernacular, and we trained them to fill in the forms. Even though the forms were in English, it was like very basic, simple. They knew what they had to do. They knew how to fill in what the numbers were, what they had to do on a day-to-day basis. And amazing. I must thank the Tamil Nadu state government. They've been amazingly supportive from the very beginning. And in India, I'm so proud to say that in India, if there's one state that has stood out for its exemplary work, reaching out to vulnerable communities across the board, has been Tamil Nadu, and it's not political. It's not political. It is the mindset of the people. It is the mindset of people who have been coming into power. I want to mention two women who I just admire so much. Two IAS officers, Mrs. Ghariali and Mrs. Supriya Sahu, two amazing women who actually, spearheaded this whole, bringing the trans women on board, creating this welfare board. This is what Mrs. Ghariali was behind. And Mrs. Supriya Sahu got all of 5 vulnerable HIV populations to HIV together and sat down and, we educated and sensitized police officers across the state, 30 districts. So that when suppose I'm out at night giving condoms to sex workers, I will not get arrested because they know what we're doing. We're protecting lives. We're there because we have to do that.
For that, was there a lot of police brutality and stuff like that?
Yes, because see, in one way they would look at it as saying, by giving a condom, you're encouraging them to be sex workers. The issue was they were sex workers, period. Whether you gave them condoms or not, they had no choice. They were there. They were picking up clients, and our fear was these clients came from all strata. They didn't come from the lower economic strata. They were rich men also. Rich people. A lot of them were married. Most of them were married. Look at how scary it was. It would spread linearly across all communities, all colors, religions, castes, whatever. There was no boundary at all. So we had to work with the population that was visible for us, which we could access, sit down and talk. Because earlier on in the 90s, it was hard to talk about sex. Now we talk about it. It's open. Social media has opened up all that. And, even the media per se, it's like a dialogue we all have regularly. So it's no longer an issue taboo. But in the 90s, we couldn't use the word sex. I worked in All India Radio for 10 years. I could not use the word sex on the air.
Did you?
I was an English. Okay. I was an English announcer, part-time English announcer for 10 years. And I remember there was a song by George Michael which says, "I Want Your Sex." That was the name of the song. We could not play that track on the air because I had to announce the name. I couldn't say, "I want your sex." That was how conservative we were, So as an English announcer playing English music, I had to get everything, pass through authority saying, okay, this is the music I'm playing. These are the songs. Everything is okay. Then I'm allowed to play. I had to write down everything I spoke on the air. Every word.
I have a comment and a question saying, is there a story where you ever screwed up? Is there a story?
Oh, God. Yes, I did.
I had to ask that. Do you mind?
Yes, because, see, I have no clue when it comes to Western classical music. Okay. I don't know my Bach from my Beethoven, my Tchaikovsky from Chopin. I don't know. I'm clueless. Okay. So, and it's not a music that I listen to. So I would just play the record and I'll be doing my Sudoku or my crossword or whatever I was doing. And the music will play. And there were two records. I announced the wrong name.
Oh my
So
God.
instead of Tchaikovsky, I said Beethoven or something like that. I can't even remember. And immediately I get a call. My duty officer calls me and says, "Mr. Sunil, you announced the wrong name. Go back immediately to the studio and correct it." So at the end of the session of half an hour, whatever, I had to quickly say, the actual musician was this, and whatever I had to say, and I got hauled up for that. So then they would not call me for a few, for so many sessions I couldn't do because I made this mistake on the air, and so I was penalized for it.
So I guess
I think I'm the only person.
You
I think I'm the only one who was penalized in All India Radio.
Sorry, can you say that again?
I was the only one who was penalized in All India Radio for making a mistake.
Yeah, no, in fact, right before All India Radio, which I did not know about, we were talking about now that you see that people are using the word, sexuality so freely, and the internet has made the world flat, and while it has its upsides, it also has this sort of put your money where your mouth is, do what you say you do. Advocacy means doing, not just talking. It's a very fine balance. Like I was telling everyone earlier, even before, that it's been a mission for me to get you on this Insta Live, and it is my absolute going to continue to be my mission to keep you as a guest at least every 2-3 weeks, because you know what, if someone like you doesn't come forward and tell us the genesis of where we came from, right, it's very easy to lose the history and just be in the today and the comfort and the privilege of what we currently have. There's obviously a long way to go, but what we've achieved is truly a privilege. And I mean, while I don't necessarily identify as an individual of the community, some of my best friends, I mean, including yourself, are from the community, and if something happened to you, it would be happening to me. So, and as you know, I'm moving on to higher studies in the other part of the world, where, even a university like Wharton, which I'm going to be attending, is completely acknowledging the gender diversity that is there in the incoming class, that I'm not sure was even part of the application process when I went for my master's in 2012. So let me tell you, it is, even that part of the world, this isn't just an India thing, it's a world thing. So coming back to, given that I would, gladly say that I know lots of people who say they're activists and advocates, and people who say and to some extent are doing things, I would say you're one of the only people who has walked the talk. So how is it? How do you, I mean, one is to, make peace with it and take a step back, because you have, several responsibilities, and you've also established yourself in the fashion world. So there is no need to really continue establishing, because it's turned into, but how do you feel about that rat race and about, the talking versus doing? Because that, I think a lot of us on this call, including myself, connect with. How do you balance that and make sense of it?
See, the thing is, I don't let it affect me. But, off late, when I see a lot of press and I see a lot of the media, how they're covering a lot of issues on LGBT, and I'm happy. I'm really happy, because now it's no longer shocking. It's no longer sensational. Earlier on, every piece that was written about the community was sensational and shocking. And, that was what sold the paper, so to speak, or they got their, mileage out of it. Now it's a lot more sensitive. There are, they know they're writing it with the right perspective, because I think a lot of us have engaged with them. And the current generation is so, up to it with, they're up to the mark. They know what's happening. They know how to write. They know how to use the right words also, and how to address certain issues. So the press is doing a fabulous job. I mean, they've been like the wind beneath our wings, literally, because they have tabled all the conversations that we couldn't do otherwise. Like, I've been on television, on talk shows in Tamil 2-3 times, and the reach has been amazing. We've had calls coming in from parents, and I think I was in tears. I still remember, because a father called up out of complete, he didn't know what to do. And the fact is, I was so happy that he took the courage to pick up the phone and call us.
What happened in that conversation? What was it about?
So, we were talking about being gay and how it impacts various parts of your life, and right from education to social acceptance and family, and how they get thrown out, and then most of them gravitate to the transgender community, they become trans, and that whole process where it's really hard. You lose the child completely, and then for them to get back into the family and be accepted is really impossible. It's near impossible. And these were the early 90s and early 2000s. So when he called, he was scared. He suddenly panicked because he recognized that his son stopped going to college because the boy could not deal with the sexual harassment and name calling at college, and he stopped completely.
Oh my God.
And then he just panicked, and he called me and he said, I think I know what, if I hadn't seen your program. So basically, the daughter saw the program in Tamil, calls the father in Bombay and says, I think you need to talk to this person. I think you need to watch this program because this is concerning your son. So the daughter was so cued in about what her brother was going through because he became depressive. He tried to kill himself. He popped pills and he did all that. They could not understand what was happening. And then suddenly this program happened. And for them, it was like a deja vu moment. They called us. And then I had a long conversation with this boy. They brought him into Chennai from Madurai. The sister's husband brought the boy in.
Wow.
This is where you feel like it was so worth doing that program. I got a lot of brickbats with it. People calling me names and abusing me. And I had that fair share also, because there'll always be people thinking, is it necessary to talk about these people? Like literally these people. Like that, the anchor was called and they asked her. So when you go through all that, and suddenly this comes, and they actually came physically and sat in front of me, and I was talking to them. It was such an emotional moment. Of course, you have to be calm, and then you have to, talk through them. And my heart went out to that little boy. He was out of +2, going into college, very sweet kid. And he said, I want to do catering, and I want to, get in the hotel management industry and all that. And so I told him, I said, if you get through, I will help you get a job. I said, I know people in the hotel industry. I said, we can help you because you're a smart kid. You will do well, but please complete your education. There's no way you can stop. I said, you're a brilliant student. You're doing really well academically. And so it was very sweet. The sister and brother-in-law was sitting there completely like, can we sit in through the session? I said, no, I need to have personal space and time with this boy. We'll talk together later, but I need to talk to him separately. So they sat outside patiently, and I'm, really, my heart goes out to that family because they came around at the right time. They saved that child. This is why we
tried to commit suicide again, probably, right? Like
yeah. Because see, if he didn't swallow all those pills that one night, when he came back from college, the mother and the sister wouldn't have realized it, right? And I think the sister by the time had married and gone. So she was also not there. So it was just the mother. Father was working in Bombay, and they're from Madurai. So it was like such a
part of our state, right? Like
so like this, there was one boy from Nagarkoil, and he called me. Again, this is another emotional story. He was being abused by his neighbor, sexually abused by his neighbor. It was heartbreaking, that story. And I used to tell him, I said, I gave him my mobile number and I said, I don't care. I'm breaking a rule. This is my number. Call me whenever you need to talk to somebody. I'm there for you. I don't do that because it's too much to do to take on a, on a personal level. But then I just was so scared. In fact, I got in touch with friends in Trivandrum because Nagarkoil is closer to Trivandrum. And I said, is there any way that some of you can just go there and catch up with this boy and see he's okay? And then what happened was he just cut himself off completely. So I have no idea what happened.
And isn't that hard, not knowing, especially because you've been so close?
It's just like you do what you can. That's what, those years has been the most emotional for me because these are personal stories. People who reached out to me on a personal basis, because based on, because I've stuck my neck out. I put my face there. There's a number there. There's a face there to call, because that's what everyone said. You can talk about LGBT, but nobody knows who's LGBT. There's no face. So I was doing that. And then the flip side is that you will get the weirdos and wackos on, creating nuisance or, being really negative towards you. Like, physically, I've been assaulted. Verbally, I've been assaulted. Immediately after these programs. Just immediately.
Like,
I did it.
Assaulted. Like, somebody's actually hurt you.
Sexually.
Oh
okay, so no. So yeah, so because I was an adult, I got out of the situation. You know what I mean? So, and then as a victim, you always blame yourself. Why was I there at that time? I shouldn't have been there. I should have listened to my friends and not walked down that road. I mean, I'm an adult. I'm in my late 20s. I'm almost 30. I said, I'm a full-grown man. I said, how can anything happen to me? So I was in that mode. Nothing can happen to me, because I'm an adult. But I was wrong. Twice, in fact. So this is something that is scary, because at that point there was nobody there, and then there was a pressure. So I remember one of my relatives saying, are you the only gay guy in India, in Chennai, that every interview, every article in the paper, your face has to come? Can't somebody else also come out and, talk? Why does it have to be you constantly? So it was, at one point it was just me constantly, because there was nobody else. And I understand.
I mean, how did you manage? Because that's a lonely journey, isn't it? How did you manage that?
For me, it was everything. See, for me, I'm a very soulful person, in the sense I do something from the heart. It comes very organic. I'm there, because these are things that I know in the long run, if I can save 5 people's lives, 1 person's life, it's worth it. Because I know I come from a position of privilege that other people don't have, and they can't do what I'm doing. So I'm not resenting the fact or saying that, these people couldn't do what I did at that time, because they didn't have the backing. I had my family backing me. I had my friends backing me. They all admired and respected the work I was doing, and that's huge. If you don't have family and if you don't have friends supporting you in your journey, I wouldn't be here today. As simple as that. That's the thing. So these are things that I'm eternally grateful for. And every time I talk about it, I talk about, how I'm embarrassed to talk about myself. A lot of my friends and family are embarrassed when I talk about it and saying, hey, if it hadn't been for you guys, I won't be here. And they're like, okay, don't talk. It's not something that they're very comfortable talking about, because they don't like the publicity in that. Because I remember sometimes the press would ask questions like, will your parents come on and talk? I said, no, they won't. And they're fine with me and what I'm doing. But I respect their privacy and I respect what they're doing, their lives. And they come from a completely different generation. I'm 55 now. My mom's 87. How do I expect her to understand what I'm doing? It's just that she accepts me. I'm her son. I'm doing this, according to her, some amazing work with people tell her. She has no clue. She lives in a little bubble and she's very happy there. So she's actually very amused at all the attention I'm getting. She says, what have you done for you to get all this attention?
No, but speaking Sunil, I have a burning question for you, because we, especially early on in the conversation, we talked about at-risk youth and, the at-risk community, and that's what got you into it and all of that. Now, we're looking at a world today. Now, I know that you've done amazing work. I know that there's a lot of light has been shed. Money has been pumped. Governments have allied. It's been an uphill journey, but I assume that we can agree that some change and some shift has been made. Now, I guess what I'm curious about and what concerns me / curiosity is that now that social media has come to the fore, and you have all these apps, and you have dating apps, and you have hookup apps, and you have, like I mentioned earlier, Grindr and things like that, where you are no longer now restricted to a space, and there is the taboo, while it was not good, it certainly, I'm sure, limited some of the risk elements of, say, reckless behavior or like multiple partners or
been. So how do you feel that we are still as much at risk now, because there is now, you can go on Grindr, have an anonymous profile, and then have unprotected sex with with 10
The risk
women.
is still there. Risk has not gone. See, that's what they say with HIV, the work we were doing with HIV and sexual health. It is continuous. Till I die, I have to keep doing this, because every generation that comes has to be educated and sensitized and say, this is what you're at risk. This is what you're putting your body through. You need to know the facts. So get armed with all the information to protect yourself. And in process, protect everybody you're with. But I see youngsters throwing caution to the wind. I think it's the youth, and it's the access to the internet, and then also it's the class thing. I think the upper class English speaking person would feel a lot more, who's more affluent, to say, I'm not at risk, as opposed to the sex worker on the streets, So there's that issue there. So that's a harder nut to crack, because there's a denial there that, first of all, they're going to deny that, oh, I'm not doing any of this thing, So then how do you reach out to them? So it's easier to work with people who are, yes, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. It's easier to work with them. And so the advent of social media has also, the flip side is that they can go even more underground. Have multiple personalities, multiple identities. You will not know who you're talking to. You will have no idea who's doing what to whom.
Correct. So, now that you're standing, because I know that you still have all the energy that you ever did. It's just that, like I said, you run away to kettle every now and then. So if you were to, and with my constant pushing, and we've got, trust me, the comment section of this chat is full of nothing but love and a few questions and a few shout outs for you. So how do we balance this whole, India, I mean, we're still catching up in terms of knowledge and access, and there's all of that happening. And then you have your grinders, and ultimately it's a free download at the end of the day, right?
Correct. So, is there a social responsibility for these apps? I mean, the apps are fine. I don't have a problem. Each to his own. They need to go out there, and it makes life easier for everybody. That's fine. But at some point, is there that social responsibility? Can we just piggyback onto any of these apps and say, can we be there as an information section where they can, get in touch with us and say, hey, I have this issue, where do I go to, who do I turn to? Because what we've done, Sahodran has done, is we have an index of numbers and doctors and hospitals that have been trained and sensitized to deal with LGBT issues, which is, I don't know how many other places have done that. Other states have done. This is what the government has done with us. And so it's easy if you just ping us, call and say, okay, I have this issue. These are the symptoms I have. These are the issues I think I'm facing. What do I do? Who do I go to? And I want to be completely anonymous. I don't want anyone to know. So we have places you can go to like that. There are doctors and hospitals that you can turn to. So we have this, database that we have of information, which technically should be shared across the board to everybody. But what happens is, I've been called this, many times. The one time that I was on a social app, they said, oh, you're a social activist. What are you doing here? So I said, hey, I'm human, I'm gay, and I need to hook up with a guy too. So they didn't accept that. So they were, no, your job is to do this. And so they see me as a very serious, boring person who's going to come and give a lecture to everybody, So then I said, okay, fine, I just withdrew. I said, I know the thing is, I was too well known in the community as a spokesperson, as a health professional, in that sense. So they couldn't see me as anybody else.
I will have to concur there, and this is just my opinion. I will tell you that, especially that I have found, living in Chennai, living in India, even though I've been exposed to the West significantly, so I feel like I've been brought up in both places. But still, I'm a Chennaiite at heart, and the minute
we all are.
The minute one's own profile gets larger than life, say I'm an entrepreneur or a motivational speaker or women leadership, women empowerment, I don't feel comfortable being on any of these apps because of exactly what you said. Because somebody will screenshot it and just be like, wait, aren't you famous, or aren't you privileged, or aren't you don't you have, what I'm saying? And so they assume that you're not normal and you don't have those, I mean,
We don't have any personal privileges. We don't have any personal space. That's the thing. So because you become a public person where they recognize you, they can't accept anything personal only from you. That's the thing. So,
exactly.
so
So,
for me, in fact,
if
when I'm in Chennai, I'm low profile. I can go out of Chennai, then I'm fine. People are like, okay, I'm just like a regular guy. So then I'm fine. Yeah.
I will completely agree with that. When one of my friends suggested, she's like, go on Bumble. I'm like, are you kidding me? Somebody will screenshot that shit and send it to me in 2 minutes and be like, aren't you like supposed to be speaking on TED? And then, you're on. I just feel like that, I think we're still.
So that's where our identity comes in the way, and people have already put you in slots, in little boxes and say, this is where you are. So, and they can't see you otherwise, at the end of the day, we are human, we are like regular people like anybody else, but they seem to forget that. It's like same with, I'm nobody that way, so I'm fine. But imagine how difficult it is for a film personality who's out there larger than life. It's a nightmare. I have, hats off. How do you live a life like that? I would be completely cuckoo if I had to deal with that kind of pressure,
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, no, I think we've talked about now. I definitely, I have a ton of questions that people have been asking. So I was just hoping to jump into that. Most of it is just love for you. Is nothing but like love for you, and I want to give them an opportunity to ask their questions. I think a lot of them are proteges of yours, have walked for you. Ketaki, hi, we've been looking at all of your comments. So glad you're supporting. Santa Maria Lambert. Do we know a Santa Maria Lambert? Is this?
Yes.
Yes, so she is being wonderful. Wayne Beck has actually, honored us with his presence, which is a very big deal. He's very famous in Chennai. Somebody wants you to say the word, Santa Maria wants you to say the word process. Is there
What?
a joke? She wants you to say the word process.
Okay, process.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that an inside joke? Because I'm just looking at it. PROOOCESSS. Okay, if that's gone over your head, no problem. Mandy, hi. Mandy says hi. Somebody else says they're proud to be from Chennai. Wayne says, the screw up in classical music, which I think was definitely funny. Somebody called Graham Edmonds because calling you William Shakespeare. So,
okay.
Everyone's as shocked as I am about you having been on All India Radio for sure. Santa Maria, no problem. I will definitely save this to IGTV and you can share it. I'll put it on YouTube. I'll put it on all of my social handles. And then I will have to do the extremely difficult job of talking to Mr. Sunil Menon on the phone and talking him through the process of putting it on his IGTV. So that
yeah. Oh God, yeah. You have to, because I'm clueless.
I will do that with you right after. I just said I have to let the public know how much work is involved for me to have got you here and then to make you put it on.
I was nervous. I was thinking, oh God, how is this going to go? What should I wear? Where should I sit? With the lighting correct? All that. Because you are always perfect. You're well lit and you're looking nice and all that. And I had to like, oh God, I have to match up.
I'll be honestly tell you, Sunil, I will thank my manager, Om. He actually stepped on the call. Om Janakiram, he's a musician from Chennai who then got into marketing and branding and all of that. So he manages my speaking engagements. So he told me 6 months ago, he's like, Anjali, you need to get on social media because if you notice, I was only doing speeches and I was only writing text. I was never doing my own video. Because, I was never comfortable whether the makeup was good enough or whether it looked right or whatever. And I also had a process of coming to terms with my face in its multiple versions. And, I also have to deal with a lot of people asking me questions, Madam, why do your 2009 picture and your 2012 picture and your 2018 picture look different? I'm like, because I've had multiple surgeries and the face is like that. And, and unless you know...
Next time, I'm going to ask you the questions.
No, we'll definitely do that. But I had a question for you before we wrap up. Is that where do you, now that hopefully, and I'm going to take this as a given, that you're now stepping out slowly but surely into at least a few conversations like today with myself and hopefully a few people who know the genesis of your journey and understand the gravitas with which you come with, because you'll just as much make a throwaway fashion comment as you will change the life of someone who is young and suffering. And I think it's these two extremes that people have trouble understanding that they're both the same person. So I hope that you continue to give people like me the privilege to talk to you. But what do you see? Do you see this as a second wind? Do you see yourself moving into maybe the next decade, trying to fuse maybe this information that you have with the technology and the kind of is there a way that you feel you can fit in to bring these two worlds together to make sure that the youth and the at-risk population who's using social media and hooking up, for lack of a better word, to be safer? Do you see yourself like being?
Yeah. See, the issue is here. One thing that I really need to flag here is we take our independence for granted, our freedom for granted. We fought all these years to get where we are today. So when this generation comes in, everything is already there. So they have to work. They just take it from where it was and then move forward in whatever direction they think is necessary. And is there an acknowledgement of where we came from, And I think that, it's like today we look at all our freedom fighters and what the country has gone through to come out of all that, and become an independent nation and then, flourish and all that. So when you look at that, there's always an acknowledgement of where we came from, our past and our history. With the LGBT community, I think that is something which really they need to understand and accept, because don't take your freedom for granted. It came really tough. We all paid a price for it, And so when you get it very easily, there's less value. They're a little frivolous about it. Like I remember very early on in the movement, this is just an anecdote, when we were fighting for that, just to get our acceptance and the law changed. I remember two young boys saying, we want gay marriages legalized. So I just sat there, I was like, we are not even legal as human beings, as Indian citizens, as LGBT, we weren't even legal. Where is marriage and adoption? And they were just jumping ahead because they were already free, we were out, we are gay and proud, and they were looking at marriage and then adoption. They were running ahead, I said, let's go step by step, You have to work with the government slowly, steadily. The law can change, mindsets will not change. As simple as look at the dowry laws in place, anti-dowry laws in place. Even today, dowry is being paid. Whether it's indirectly, directly, or voluntarily, whatever. So when it's very clear that you have laws in place, the mindset has still not changed. The rich are still doing it. There are affluent people giving their daughter away with so much. And they say, we're doing it voluntarily. But they want to make sure that the child is financially secure wherever she's going, And that's the reason you don't do this abroad. Kids are independent. They run their whole life. Exactly. So when that law has not helped change mindsets in India, which is like a common everyday denominator in our lives, when it comes to marriage, proposals, there's a wheeling and dealing, it's like a transaction that's happening, a lot of things have to be worked out, right?
Right.
It hasn't changed. It still hasn't changed. And so for us to expect Section 377 being read down, and then suddenly everyone's going to hug us and accept us as LGBT, it's not going to happen.
We have, I have to acknowledge Vision in Red. Thank you so much. I will definitely do more. But sorry, Sunil, and Karun has also given us both hugs. Karun, we're so glad you join us. In fact, it would have been great if you could have joined us a little bit earlier. We would have loved to have asked you also a few questions since you're so active in the community now. But Sunil, I have a question now about these two boys whom you said are running ahead because they're not acknowledging how hard the journey has been to come here. Do you think that gay marriage is something that we can aspire for, hopefully, in the next 10 years, or do you think that is that me running as well? am I hoping for too much soon?
Everything will take time. That's as simple as that. So you have to be persistent. You have to engage with all the right people. We see Tamil Nadu is an example because we sat with the government. We didn't sit in our air-conditioned offices and write emails and think everything will work. No, we were physically engaging in conversations. There were conferences, workshops with everybody, all the stakeholders. It was not just the government. It was, I mean, not just the funding agencies. There were police. There were lawyers. It was the press. Everybody. We had to have allies, make them understand. It was a huge process. And so many people, I don't take credit for anything. There are so many unsung heroes in this process. In Tamil Nadu, especially the transgender community, if just because I don't see many of them articulate enough to speak in English, but they have done so much work, so much that is charted, and that's one place that people have no clue what their contribution has been to Tamil Nadu state being one of the frontier premier states vis-a-vis sexual health and LGBT in the country. And I can say that very proudly and with conviction that even till date, this is the truth, because we had a healthy conversation and we constantly dialogue with the government and non-government organizations. If you expect, just now, everybody expects to be online, social media, put your posts out, criticize, say this, say that, and expect change to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You can change mindsets online, but what matters is the government and non-government agencies that will make the process happen, So this is where the battle lies.
I completely agree. In fact, I always, and I say this loosely in other conversations as well, that, we've turned into a hashtag generation. Everyone's jumping onto the next trending hashtag and commenting about it, So if it's COVID, it's hashtag. I mean, you are someone who has stood your bottom line from the day I met you till today, which is why I have consistently been after you to come out and, and I come out, no pun intended.
I didn't think people would be interested to hear my story.
Come out onto social media, but I'm going to have to get you to commit to at least doing 2-3 more sessions with me, because we have so many comments here and so many unanswered questions, but we try not to stretch it to more than an hour. So if you can give me 2-3 more of your precious dates, I think we would all be thrilled, because there's so much more to get into, Sunil. There are so many stories, but if you can share with me perhaps an anecdote that took place in Namma Chennai and Tamil because we have a lot of people who ask me, Tamil please pesunga. Most people think I don't know Tamil. My Tamil is actually pretty decent, and it's getting better. But if you can tell us, a story that maybe that has touched you, that took place in Chennai, which you feel that was a harbinger of change for you emotionally. Not just from a macro sense, but maybe that resonated with you personally, that you could recount for us before we close today. That would really, since we're all proud Chennaites, most of us on this call.
See, I can't think of one particular anecdote or incident that happened, but what for me was a powerful tool that I used effectively was using the media. But it was television and print media, and I used the vernacular media, because that's where you reach out to the most number of people. And, if I'd stuck to, speaking in English or an English talk show or, radio program, print, whatever interviews I've done, my reach was much more, much limited. As vis-a-vis when I did a Tamil interview, when in different magazines, then I did Tamil talk shows. And that is the best part, because when you get the positive feedback, when you get, like I said, when families actually, that was the main reason I did it, because I want families to understand that these are your children, this is your flesh and blood. You can't disown them, you can't throw them away and, excommunicate them or ostracize them just because you don't understand what your child is going through, And that was the biggest victory for me when there was this few success stories. Like I told you, this family that came to me, the sister brought the brother along. Completely emotional moment for all of us, And there were other horror stories also, which that's for another time. where,
No,
and
I'm going to definitely get into that because, I think that a lot of people on the chat and on the call want to get into.
because, what we've not spoken about is the sexual harassment and abuse that has happened,
Yeah.
I only spoke about my movement, I mean, how I came and my journey. But when, as somebody, I don't know if I can call myself an activist or whatever you want to call me, working
Activist.
in Sahodaran, reaching out, just being there. It is just that physically, emotionally, and mentally, I was there, present. We, as a group, were there for people who needed help at that point. Whether they acknowledged us later, whether they were grateful, is irrelevant. The fact is that we fulfilled a role which was very important in that person's life, and that helped them stabilize and understand who they are so that they could take their life forward. When they were going through all these issues, like there was one boy who had to be admitted into a mental institution. It was
Yeah.
that was a real downer for us because we had lost him completely. That was scary. So that was a rude shock for a lot of us because I remember I broke down. I couldn't handle the situation, and we had to sedate the boy because we had to take him to a psychiatrist, and he refused to go. His whole anger was towards his family because the family stood quietly and watched what happened to him and were in denial. But then we were accepting and we understood what he went through. And so he would only talk to us. But to get him, because I remember speaking to a psychiatrist and he said, Sunil, you have to bring him right now. And he refused to leave the office. He just wanted to be with us. And so we had to sedate him. I went up to there's a little pharmacy right opposite. So I rushed to the pharmacy and I told that lady, and I'm crying, I literally tears streaming down my cheeks, and I said, I need a sleeping pill urgently. And she didn't ask me a question. There was no prescription, nothing. She just handed me the pills. She knew something was wrong. And because then I rushed back, and then we had to convince this boy to have a cup of tea in which the sleeping dosage was given, because at one point he tried to tear his clothes off and run out of the office onto the streets. He was screaming. So it was a completely violent, it was an incident that none of us can forget. My staff were amazingly cool and calm. They handled him so well. And then once he calmed down because the medications are working, they could take him in an auto to the doctor. And then I spoke to the doctor and he said, we are sending him to NIMHANS. So that means that's how serious he was. Yeah.
Right.
So, and I don't want, so that was like a wake up call for us. Like we were sitting there reaching out to people with all regular issues and all that. But this was the extreme. This has never happened to us. We've never had an extreme case like this. This happened again because they saw our program on television or somewhere. And this boy's sister and husband brought him to us because they didn't know what to do. He was locked inside a house, in a room. They wouldn't let him out. I mean, that story is horrific. The thing is, I'm just praying that he's in a better place and he's better healed or whatever. There's certain things that will remain inside you forever because there's no closure.
The lack of closure as well, right? Even for you, like kind of just not.
So, and we are not in a position, we don't have psychiatrists at our center. Ours is just a drop-in center where we have a counselor who will deal with your regular emotional, mental issues, like what you can handle as a growing adult, This was abuse which we've never seen before. You hear about it, you see, you've seen films and whatever. That's a topic that none of us broach also, But when this happened to us in our face right there, that was like that just shook all of us up, and then you realize that whatever you've done, it was worth it. Everything that we did as a group, and all my staff, completely indebted to each and every boy who's worked for me. Amazingly that they've given up their time and effort because it's not easy. These boys are paid a pittance. We're run on government salaries, very small amount of money. And but they're the ones saving lives. So that's the sad part. They're the ones saving lives. The people who decide what to give us are the ones earning in lakhs.
Yeah.
They decide how much to pay each of my boys, and that was very heartbreaking for me. So, that's something that I've constantly fought for. And saying the most important person is your outreach person, the person who's out there reaching out to individuals from the community, making that connect, bringing them into the center, making that connection to a counselor, a hospital, a doctor, to make sure that that person's sexual health is seen through. The healing is set in place. Pivotal people, extremely important people.
Frontline staff is, especially in work like yours, the frontline people are really truly the heroes. But with that, we do have to wrap because we have, it is. It's been the thing is there's so much more to get into, and we want to break it up into sections where we can actually dive deeper because there's a whole lot of interest. And let me tell you, Sunil, like even I am like overwhelmed by the kind of response that we've received over the last 1 hour. Like I've had so many people drop in, and I'm hoping that the comments will not cover your face when I post the video, but that actually might end up happening. We'll see. We'll try our way around it. But
Okay.
It's been a complete pleasure having you. So if you could just sign off in Tamil, just for my sake and for the sake of all of our viewers, that would be awesome.
எல்லாரும் சேஃபா இருக்கணும். இந்த கோவிட் டைம்ல எல்லாரும் பாதுகாப்பான முறையில மாஸ்க் அணிந்து சானிடைசர் யூஸ் பண்ணிட்டு வீட்டுல கொஞ்சம் தயவு செய்து வீட்டுல உட்காருங்க. Because we have only one life and one body. So if you don't look after our health, the thing is, if you are not going to look after yourself, you can't look after your loved ones. As simple as that. So முதல்ல உங்க உடம்ப, உங்க உடல, உங்க ஹெல்த்தை நீங்க பாதுகாப்பு பண்ணாதான் மத்தவங்களை நீங்க ஒழுங்கா பார்க்க முடியும்.
I love you, Sunil. It has been a complete pleasure, and I will make sure to get you back again and again for many more rounds of this, because clearly we have a lot. We've scratched the surface, and I can tell you, at least we're going to have a hashtag Sunil is back trending. So, all right, I will leave you, and I will call you and help you get this on IGTV. Okay? So,
okay.
Good night, guys. Thank you for tuning in.
Okay. Good night.